for truth seekers everywhere, restoring the Republic, fighting for you, the American people. This is the Alex Morgan Show.
Hey folks, how y'all doing tonight? Just trying to tweet that out and all that, get all my links straight. Got a busy night here, as you can see. I'm a little late with this broadcast. I did manage to score me a new microphone stand today, believe it or not. It's pretty cool too. Still working on getting me a new mic, but you know, gotta do what you can while you can, and that's about all you can do. So how y'all been? Phone lines are open. 276-524-0047. Let me know what's going on. Little update on that girl that was sick the other night. She passed away. So her thoughts and prayers definitely go out to her family. In fact, why don't we have a moment of silence for her? Yeah, she was a pretty good old girl. She'd been sick a long time. I later found out today that she had a lot more wrong with her than what I ever did know. But they buried her today. And I know I've been away for a while. I hardly get time to do anything. I've been working around the house lately. Been doing a little Independence Day celebrating. Not very much on the celebrating, but yeah, just been hanging out with my family and a few friends. That's about it. I managed to make us a new theme song for the show. Actually borrowing the solo from Master of Puppets. But yeah, if anybody wants to get on the live chat, we had one person on there other night. I don't know who they was for sure, but you can message me on any of the social media sites or whatever, and I'll add you to that. I'm actually pretty new to it. I don't listen to people live on Spreaker much. There are a few shows that I listen to from time to time, but I'm not too consistent with listening to Spreaker. But Trump, he took a trip to Poland. We'll be covering that. We'll be covering the mainstream media and their war on the people. There was one story here that I retweeted earlier from the Conservative Institute, I think it was. And you'll really have to forgive me. I got these earplugs in and I feel like I'm half deaf. There really ain't much need for them, I don't guess, but you know, I'm wearing them anyway. Might actually pull those out a little bit later. But yeah, it's been pretty boring here lately, to tell you the truth. And when it comes to the news, I'll just tell you, there's so much news that I can't cover it in a 30 or a 3-hour broadcast. It's pretty impossible. We have this Muslim lady right here. She's calling for jihad. I actually saw this video earlier today. I don't know if TV viewers can see that. Trying to move my light source around. But yeah, I know I don't got the best of equipment, but Linda Sazar. Let's see if we can find that on Twitter or YouTube, I mean.
it's been 16, almost 17 years since the horrific attacks of 9/11. And we still, as a community, find ourselves unprepared in so many moments. Why, sisters and brothers? Why are we so unprepared? Why are we so afraid?
Let it load there a minute.
This administration and the potential chaos.
Let me start that over so you
it's
get
been 16, almost 17 years since the horrific attacks of 9/11. And we still, as a community, find ourselves unprepared in so many moments. Why, sisters and brothers? Why are we so unprepared? Why are we so afraid of this administration and the potential chaos that they will ensue in our community? And we already saw their potential when they come out every few weeks. Muslim ban 1, Muslim ban 2, Muslim ban 3. They are relentless. They are persistent and consistent and want to see how much we as a community can endure and want to see who our friends are and how hard we're going to fight back against this administration. And I hope that when we stand up to those who oppress our communities, that Allah accepts from us that as a form of jihad, that we are struggling against tyrants and rulers, not only abroad in the Middle East or in the other side of the world, but here in these United States of America, where you have fascists and white supremacists and Islamophobes reigning in the White House. We have to stay outraged. Do not criticize me when I say that we as a Muslim community in these United States of America have to be perpetually outraged every single. When I wake up in the morning and I remember who's sitting in the White House, I am outraged. This is not normal, sisters and brothers. Those people sitting in the most powerful seats in this country is not normal. So do not ever be those citizens that normalize this administration, because when the day comes that something horrific happens to us or to another community, you will be responsible for normalizing this administration. Our number one and top priority is to protect and defend our communities. It is not to assimilate and to please any other people in authority. Our obligation is to our young people, is to our women, and make sure our women are protected in our community. And our top priority, even higher than all those priorities, is to please Allah and only Allah.
Talking about protecting women in their communities, which they genital mutilate women in their communities. So you can kind of see, how this whole thing makes sense. This is another George Soros funded effing radical, okay? Just because that Islamic Umar Abedin's girlfriend didn't win and ain't in the White House, I wish that people would just leave it alone. We have put up with the worst treasonous scum that has ever been introduced to the American public. For 8 years. 8 years we've watched him give our wealth away, giving hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign countries, giving hundreds of billions of dollars to financial firms and banks and BS. Amen. But that's okay, That's okay. We've got the Atlantic with an article. Trump can't reverse the decline of white Christian America. Written on the 4th of July. Are you serious? You talk about a slap in the face. And I apologize for the brightness of my TV. Can you dim that remote? It's really, really bright. And when it comes to a page that's white, it's like looking at a light source or something. But yeah, I apologize for that. No, I don't have the best equipment ever was, folks. That's why I need your support. I do all I can to inform y'all what's going on and show you the absurdity, the outrage that liberal America force feeds to you on a daily basis. Is this not getting old to you? I mean, we won that election. We've won 5 special elections since. But all you hear is wah, wah, wah. It will never be good enough. Meanwhile, Macron's declaring himself practically God, as he says he will, quote, rule like Neptune, I think it was, unquote. Yeah, that's pathetic. That's an article right there from Breitbart. Emmanuel Bonaparte, Macron, declares he will govern like a Roman god. French President Emmanuel Macron has declared he will govern France like Jupiter, the Roman king of the gods, shortly after officials told the media his thought process was, quote, too complex, unquote, for journalists to understand. Summoningly, over 900 politicians from both houses of the French Parliament to a rare congress at the palace of Louis XIV, the Sun King, in Brussels. He threatened to overrule lawmakers with a referendum if they try to frustrate the, quote, reforms, unquote, he wishes to impose on the legislature. Such assemblies are usually reversed for times of national crisis. Reuters reports him as saying he desires to reign as, quote, Jupiterian, unquote, president, quote, a remote, defiant, dignified figure, like a Roman god of gods, who weighs his rare pronouncements carefully, unquote. This is crazy, folks. This is what happens when you give power to someone like Emmanuel Macron. That's why I was outraged when I found out he had won the election, the French election. Yeah, I really don't think he won it. You had like too much of liberal Hollywood and the liberal media supporting him. Obama supported him. Anywhere you see Obama, you see a trail of evil. Okay? He reeks of evil. Macron was obviously groomed for this position. He stayed in private school his whole life. He ends up marrying his teacher. You know, that's weird alone. That gives a whole new meaning to that song Hot for Teacher. You know what I'm saying? She's like, I don't know, 25, 30 years older than him, for one thing. I know age got a lot to do with it when it comes to love, but I don't know. You would think that, well, again, he was obviously brainwashed from the get-go, I would say. And I would say that he's nothing but a puppet. Here we have Jack Posobiec tweeting, quote, "People say Trump is unsustainable for tweeting memes about Macron is going around declaring himself a Roman god." Yeah, I know, that's the world that we're living in. The bizarre, let's get back to the article. This bizarre statement of intent comes just days after Macron scrapped the president's traditional Bastille Day press conference with an Elias Palace official claiming the 39-year-old's thoughts are, quote, too complex, unquote, for journalists. Macron's, quote, complex thought process lends itself badly to the game of question and answer with journalists, unquote. The spokesman explained, prompting much mockery in the French press. It has been speculated that Macron is keen to cultivate an aloof, almost imperial aura after being derided as a replacement for the unpopular socialist Franciscus Hollande, in whose government he served as economy minister, or as a poodle for Angela Merkel, the German chancellor widely regarded as European Union's driving force. Quote, "You are the heir of Francis Hollande," quote, scoffed national rival Marine Le Pen during the head-to-head election debate. Quote, We now call you Baby Hollande, Hollande Jr., unquote. She added that whatever the outcome of the election, quote, France will be led by a woman, either me or Mrs. Merkel, unquote. much of the community on Macron's alleged natural submissiveness hints at his relationship with his wife, 25 years his senior, with Italy's larger-than-life former president Silvio Berlusconi, teasing that he is, quote, a nice lad with a good-looking mom, unquote. Efforts by the EU loyalists to strengthen his public standing by picking fights with the governments of Central Europe who have been resolutely defiant in the face of attempts by Brussels to impose compulsory migrant quotas on them have been less than successful. Hungarian Premier Viktor Orban gently dismissed him as, quote, a new boy who had yet to find his feet. Macron's entrance wasn't too encouraging, as he thought the best way to show friendship was to immediately kick Central Europe's countries. This isn't how we do things around here, but he'll soon get to know his way around, unquote, he added. Posing the EU's champion against President Donald Trump has also backfired with a pointed public snub of the U.S. leader in favor of Angela Merkel and other Europeans at G20 summit, ending in embarrassment when the 70-year-old manhandled him with a powerful handshake. Macron was clearly rattled by the exchange, granting a brief interview with journalists in order to emphasize that another handshake with President Trump, in which the Frenchman clung on for dear life, was, quote, moment of truth in which he supposedly demonstrated that he, quote, would not make small concessions, not even symbolic ones, unquote. But this is crazy. How could someone compare themselves to a god? That's pathetic. But that's how they see themselves, especially compared to us. Their reason for existing is to rule over us, just like our reason for existing is for them to rule over us, you know? Kind of like yin and yang. But yeah. It's the way it goes. Don't know if we got anybody out there listening tonight or not. Again, that phone number 276-524-0047. I'd love to hear from somebody. Don't matter who, just give me a call. We will talk to you. But we also had we got a protest going on, G20 conference. the videos from it look horrendous. Let that load back up. I watched it a little bit while ago. See if y'all can see that pretty good. I'll play this video.
Die Barrikade wird in Kürze von dem Einsatzfahrzeug geräumt. Entfernen Sie sich zu Ihrer eigenen Sicherheit. Sollten Sie sich nicht entfernen, wird der Wasserwerfer gegen Sie eingesetzt.
See that big tanker truck there? They use that to hose down the protesters with high-powered water spray.
Weiter Durchsage der Polizei, entfernen Sie sich von der Barrikade, entfernen Sie sich vor dem Einsatzfahrzeug und sonst von der Wasserwerfer weiter gegen Sie eingesetzt. Werfer 1, Werfer 2, Wassermarsch. Entfernen Sie sich zu Ihrer eigenen Sicherheit von den Einsatzfahrzeugen.
That's the first video. I think there's some more, but let's actually get into this article right here. Around 100,000 protesters from across Europe are pouring into Hamburg ahead of the G20 summit tomorrow. German police in armored vans sprayed some of the hardcore anti-capitalists with water and pepper spray. They feared as many as 8,000 were ready to commit violence at the protest dubbed, quote, "Welcome to Hell," unquote. Police are also investigating whether an overnight fire at a Porsche dealership was linked to the summit. Host Chancellor Angela Merkel faces a tough task on navigating talks, including trade and climate change. Violent scenes continued into the night at the G20 summit in Hamburg as hardcore anti-capitalist protesters set fires after earlier being hit with water cannons and pepper spray by German right police. Dramatic photos showed helmeted officers battling to keep order after 100,000 protesters poured into the city for their, quote, "welcome to hell" protest, unquote, against the meeting of world leaders. Police say they repeatedly asked a group of demonstrators to remove their masks and hoods, but instead officers were hit with bottles and bricks, breaking the window of a riot van. The violence broke out near the start of the demonstration at a riverside plaza used for Hamburg's weekly fish market. But yeah, you can see right here how crazy all this is. Which, see that guy's eyes right there? I don't know if you can make out that or not. I would zoom that in for you, but yeah, just the look on this guy's face right here says it all. I don't blame these people. I would be upset too if I was living in a place where my leaders didn't defend me, didn't defend my Christian community, my Christian family. They just got open borders and come on in, the more the merrier. What they are doing will definitely play part in probably the destruction of Europe as a continent. I mean, you take a continent that's pretty much predominantly white, and you turn the Caucasian people into the minority, replacing them with a Muslim community which practices Sharia law. They don't believe in your laws. They don't believe in your culture. Nothing like that. And you look at the ratio between families, the children born into Muslim families versus the number of children born into Christian families or white families, and I mean, it's crazy to think about. The Muslims have like anywhere from 6 to 8 children per family, when the average white Caucasian family has like 1.5 children per family. And when you have numbers like that over a decade or two's passing of time, the Muslims are going to take over. That's all that can happen. I mean, there's nothing to keep them from it. And that's not even counting like all the sterilization and defertilization and the plastics and the water and pharmaceutical medicine and all this, whether you know it or not, there's a war on, and you're public enemy number one, just to tell you the truth. They don't want. That's why Obama, when he would bring Syrian refugees over here, if he brought 100, he would bring like 90 Muslims and maybe like 4 Sunnis, 4 Shiites, and then he'd bring 1 Christian. So, yeah. That's why. Because there's a war on Christianity as a whole. I've actually heard people say that there will come a time when the Bible will be outlawed. And I can actually see that happening now. I mean, you take the American flag out of schools, you take the 10 Commandments out of schools, you take prayer out of schools, whether it's voluntary or mandatory or what, you take it out, you take the Bible out. Not only that, the education, education in this country, all it has done is like sexualize children. When I was in grade school, they came around to the schools. Now, I was in 3rd or 4th grade, I think, and all of a sudden you have an officer coming to the school telling you about drugs, asking you, does your mommy and daddy do drugs? Do they smoke pot? Does your mommy and daddy ever, sniff white powder up their nose? Does your mommy and daddy drink alcohol? Does your mommy and daddy have guns? Yeah. And you think about it, there's nobody has any right asking your children anything like that. But, that's okay. And that's just when you're little. Then when you get in 5th and 6th grade, then they can teach you all about the Big Bang Theory and how cells multiply and how the sexual reproduction in mammals takes place. And yeah, sex. But I mean, that's what we get when we hand our children over to a bunch of devil worshipping cultists, you might as well say. And that's pretty much all they've proven to be. And I mean, even before the WikiLeaks came out, America should have known what they really thought about us, because, like, I'll tell you, actions speak volumes, okay? You take any body that considers themselves a politician, you know, like before Trump, they all wanted to get into office so they could fix healthcare, work on the budget, fix the education system, fix the roads, fix corruption in office, blah blah blah. The list goes on and on. But once they get in office, they seem to forget all about this. Whatever they had on their minds when they, were campaigning, and just like Obama said, changed. The only thing that he changed was his drawers. What time he stayed at the White House. God, man, that's pathetic. But hey, I've been in here for 4 years, and I ain't done nothing. I ain't changed nothing because I ain't had enough time. So, hey, you should just re-elect me, and then I can really change stuff. The perfect re-election slogan right there. I didn't change it last time, but I'll change it this time. And what did he change? How much money that was sent overseas? I'll tell you one thing he changed. He changed the war on terrorism to the war on you. He started the biggest surveillance state ever known to man. He funded known terrorists. He armed known terrorists. He even freed terrorists he pardoned terrorists, okay? I mean, just like I got through saying, actions speak volumes. Look at that. That tells you all you needed to know right there. And there's still people that supports Obama right to this day. If you say anything negative about Obama, they'll probably want to fight with you. No kidding. I mean, really, come on. It's shameful to even consider yourself affiliated in politics and support something as anti-American, as low down, and oh my God, man. But Trump supporters are homophobes or xenophobes or they're I know what they are. They're white supremacists. That's what they are. Jesus Christ. Man, the people that are pushing this stuff, they're the racist. They're the ones that don't like Christians. They're the ones that hates white America. Let alone black people or tan people. To me, there's just one race, and that's the human race, okay? Man, this has went on for too many years, okay? They use all this stuff to divide us. This is nothing but a plan orchestrated by the elite, by the man who pushed this garbage on us and use our children against us. They control the colleges. They control everything. They control the media. They control the TV networks. They control the education systems. They control all the little organizations in the government. They've got their hands in about all of them, if not all. And I'm telling you, any way we can vote people like that out of office, we need to do so. Any means necessary. And I mean that. I really do. Trying to find an article right here I had from earlier. I don't know if y'all heard about this. There's been a lot of cover up about this from the mainstream media. I actually haven't heard nothing about it from the mainstream media. I think this story broke over this past weekend. I meant to cover it on the last show, but I got too wrapped up in something. I don't know what it was, but it just didn't get covered. I didn't cover half the news I wanted to cover in that episode, and I do apologize. And again, folks, I'm definitely not the only means of news out there. There are lots of good sources. There really are, and I just want to be, maybe at the least a small cog in the machine, or something along those lines. I don't want to dominate per se. I don't. Yeah, as long as I can, be able to monetize my channel and gain a pretty decent audience, keep reaching new people, about every week or every few days or every when I, do these broadcasts. Long as I can do that, I'm satisfied. So, yeah, but anyway, I've badly digressed. This article is from Vox.com. Pope Francis's top Vatican ally has just been charged with child sex abuse. The Catholic priest sex abuse scandal has just made its way to the top of the Vatican. says it's updated by Tara Isabella Burton at Notorious TBI, Tara.Burton at Vox.com, June 29th, 2017, 1:40 p.m. Cardinal George Pell, the third senior official at the Vatican, was discharged with multiple, quote, historical, unquote, sexual assaults in his native Australia and ordered to appear in a Melbourne court next month. 90 minutes after the charges were announced, the Catholic Archdiocese of Sydney released a statement that Pell would, quote, return to Australia as soon as possible to clear his name, unquote. Authorities have not yet released information about the alleged victims, but they are believed to have involved minors. Pell, one of the most powerful men in the Vatican, has been at the center of a media firestorm in recent years in his native Australia involving whether or not he, as Archbishop of Melbourne, has been involved in covering up abuses of others. Last year, before any accusations against him surfaced, Pell became involved in the wider scandal when he testified to an Australian Commission on Clerical Child Abuse, speaking via video link from Rome. He has expressed regret for not having done more to protect victims of abuse. There he came under fire for having inadequately responded to one case of confirmed abuse in his diocese. Ballarat, at a district with one of the most checkered histories of sex abuse involving a pedophile ring. As Archbishop of Sydney, Pell himself had been accused in 2002 of a sexual misconduct involving an incident with a minor at a summer camp in 1961. He was cleared of all wrongdoing. Since late last year, renewed rumors have swirled of Pell's own personal involvement in sexual abuse. Last year, investigators met with Pell in Rome to discuss a number of historical allegations. A collection of statements, including allegations that Pell had inappropriately touched children while swimming with them, was passed to prosecutors this February, and an Australian Senate motion called for Pell to return to give evidence to investigators. He later did so via video link, citing ill health. In May, a new book about Pell by journalist Louise Milligan came out, reporting allegations that Pell had himself abused a number of children on several occasions. Rumors have swarmed since then that charges were imminent, but they were filed this morning. Pell is the most senior member of the Catholic Church to be involved in what has now been decades of scandal over systematic child abuse in the 1960s, 70s, and early 80s by Catholic clergy worldwide. The sex abuse scandal, which reached the public eye in the 1990s after a series of television documentaries, including 1994's Suffer the Children, brought the issue to light in Ireland has spread with reports of widespread clerical abuse affecting thousands of children in dozens of countries, including the US and Pale's own Australia. One Australian study undertaken by a royal commission found that a full 7% of Australian priests were accused of child abuse between 1950 and 2009. Almost as damning as the allegations themselves have been the allegations of a Vatican cover-up. Several reports into the abuse have found that senior church officials rarely took action after allegations of abuse, systematically transferring accused offenders into different parishes where they would continue to come into contact with children rather than seeking legal recourse or punishment. Often, Vatican officials chose to seek offenses in the religious category of sin, sexual misconduct caused by temptation, and to be addressed through prayer and repentance, with the focus on the abuser's state of mind, rather than through the lens of crime or systematic abuse. As Thomas Rees puts it in his National Catholic Reporter, quote, "It was thought that if the priest were moved away from temptation to another parish, the problem would be solved. Instead, many priests found new children to victimize and abuse again. In other words, the bishops responded pastorally to the priests, but ignored the risk to children," unquote. In practice, this led to a culture of enabling. In one of the most shocking revelations to come out of the Ireland cases, the Dublin Archdiocese had in 1987 taken out an insurance policy to cover expected future compensation claims by victims. Ballarat, Australia, where Pole was an episcopal victor for education between 1973 and 1984, was one of the worst hotbeds of abuse, with sexual abuse by both priests and nuns rife at St. Alpha's Primary School, called, quote, "a pedophile's paradise and a child's nightmare," end quote, by Australian television. Pale's accusations present a quandary for Pope Francis. Many critical of both John Paul II and Benedict XVI's sluggish pace in addressing the issue were hopeful that Pope Francis would prove a far more pervasive ally when it came to contending with the Church's legacy of sex abuse. And in his initial years as Pope, Francis seemed willing to address these concerns. In 2013, shortly after becoming Pope, he announced the creation of a Vatican committee to fight sex abuse in the Church, and in 2014 named 18 people, including former survivor Mary Collins, to the committee. In April 2014, he also publicly apologized for the Vatican's action, breaking a trend of Vatican obfuscation, as he said, quote, "It is personal, moral damage carried out by men of the Church," end quote. Francis insisted, quote, "The Church will not take one step backwards," unquote, in dealing with this problem. He also announced any priest who had enabled abuse by moving an abuser to another parish should resign. But progress has been slow. The Pope scrapped one of the main proposals of the Vatican Committee, that bishops accused of covering up abuse be subject to tribunal. After bishops objected, and earlier this year Collins himself stepped down from the committee, citing the Vatican's, quote, shameful, unquote, resistance to redressing its wrongs. The final straw, she said, was the Vatican's reluctance to comply with recommendation that all correspondence for those identifying themselves as victims of abuse should receive a response. But the Pope continued involvement with Cardinal Pell has proved fodder for critics who say he is not doing enough to redress the Vatican's wrongs. The arrest plunges into uncertainty another less visible initiative towards reform in the Vatican, dealing with the corruption in the relation to the Vatican's finances. The Pope made Secretariat essentially the Vatican's treasurer in 2014, giving Pell staggering amount of personal power, as the Pope also entrusted Pell with the Vatican financial reform. As Secretariat, Pell was tenacious to the point of abrasive in what he saw as rooting out corruption in the Vatican coffers, something critics saw as a sign of his desire to use his post to consolidate personal power. Since 2014, however, the Pope seems to have cooled on Pell and has reduced the power of his office significantly. The murky nature of the Vatican's finances and the uncertain outcome of the reform scheme render Pell's position and his relationship with the Pope even more complicated. The Pope and Pell have also seemingly fallen out over theological issues. With Pell more vocally hardline on social issues than the Pope, joining other cardinals in questioning the Pope's handling of a 2015 synod on the family, and verbally supporting those who sent formal dubs or W to the Pope regarding potentially gay-friendly language in his 2016 encyclical Amoris Laetitia. At the same time, the Pope refused to accept Pell's mandatory resignation last year after Pell's first set of testimonies last year. Cardinals must submit resignations on their 75th birthdays, which the Pope is free to disregard. But as scandal has hit Pell himself, the Pope has expressed unwillingness to condemn his one-time ally before the facts were ascertained. Last year, he told journalists asking about his continued support of Pell in light of allegations, quote, "We have to wait for justice and just first not to make a metallic judgment, a judgment of gossip, because that won't help," he said. "Once justice has spoken, I will speak," end quote. But if and when justice does speak, it's unclear what the Pope will say, or whether he says will have any meaningful effect. This was the headline up on Drudge earlier before it was taken down, and the one about welcome to hell protests. It comes from the Daily Mail. Trump finally turns on Russia as he warns Putin to stop his aggression in Syria and Ukraine as he issues full-throated attack on radical Islamic terrorism and government bureaucracy to delight thousands of Poles who chant his name. President Trump met with Polish President, I can't say that for nothing, President Duda, D-U-D-A, on Thursday at the Royal Castle in Warsaw. Where's it go? He later questioned during a landmark speech in Krasinski Square whether the West has the will to survive. Trump hit Russia later for its destabilizing activities in Ukraine and elsewhere and its support for hostile regimes, including Syria and Iran. He urged Vladimir Putin's government to join the U.S. and its allies in the global fight against terrorism. Earlier said he thought Russia had interfered in the election, but that Obama had done nothing about it. Visit to Warsaw came ahead of a journey to Germany for the G20 summit on Friday and Saturday. President Donald Trump browbeat Russia on Thursday for its destabilizing activities in Ukraine and elsewhere, and its support for hostile regimes, including Syria and Iran, and urged Vladimir Putin's government to join the U.S. and its allies in the global fight against terrorism. Trump had refused earlier in the day to pin election hacking last year in the U.S. on the Kremlin, saying he thinks it was Putin's government, but it could have been other people in other countries. And he did not mention Russia by name in his remarks to the Polish people when he committed the U.S. to making sure Warsaw is never again held hostage to a single supplier of energy, but turning to threats against the West later in his speech in front of a memorial to the 1944 Warsaw Uprising. Trump railed against the steady creep of government bureaucracy, along with radical Islamic terrorism and powers that seek to test our will, undermine our confidence, and challenge our interest. To meet new forms of aggression, including propaganda, financial crimes, and cyber warfare, we must adapt our lives to compete effectively in new ways and on new battlefields, he said in a direct reference to Moscow's meddling. Speaking to thousands of cheering Poles, Trump called their nation the geographic heart of Europe and praising their countrymen for shaking off both Nazi oppressors and Russian occupiers in the last century. That's trouble. That's tough, he exclaimed. In those dark days, you have lost your land, but you never lost your pride.
It is beautiful.
Hold on, let me back it up again.
This is my first visit to Central Europe as president, and I am thrilled that it could be right here at this magnificent, beautiful piece of land. It is beautiful. Poland is the geographic heart of Europe, but more importantly, in the Polish people, we see the soul of Europe. Your nation is great because your spirit is great and your spirit is strong. For 2 centuries, Poland suffered constant and brutal attacks. But while Poland could be invaded and occupied and its borders even erased from the map, it could never be erased from history or from your hearts. In those dark days, you have lost your land, but you never lost your pride.
Trump delivered his address in Krasinski Square at the foot of a statue commemorating the 1994 Polish uprising against German occupiers. He and First Lady Melania Trump laid a wreath at its base. Speaking behind bulletproof glass, the president said Poles are, quote, a people who truly know the value of what you defend, end quote. He urged them to uphold a future in which good conquers evil. They repeatedly chanted USA, USA, and Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Trump had earlier met with Polish President and warned that the future of the West is in doubt. In a speech to the public, he praised Poland's, quote, will to survive, unquote, because they have, quote, never, ever forgotten who they are, end quote. The Polish experience reminds us the defense of the West ultimately rests not only on means, but also on the will of its people to prevail, Trump said. Your oppressors tried to break you, but Poland could not be broken. And Trump projected his fight against Middle Eastern terrorism onto the template of Poland's historic struggles, saying, quote, we are fighting hard against radical Islamic terror and we will prevail, unquote. Quote, America and Europe have suffered one terror attack after another. We are going to get it to stop, he said. Quote, while we will always welcome new citizens who share our values and love our people, our borders, and always be closed to terrorism and extremism of any kind, unquote. The president urged European nations to commit more of their money to NATO, and he said the organization's Article 5 commitment to mutual defense is an ironclad guarantee. Quote, words are easy, but actions are what matters, unquote. He urged, quote, Europe must do more. Europe must demonstrate that it believes in its future by investing its money to secure that future, unquote. At a press conference following his private talks with President Duda, Trump said North Korea should face, quote, consequences, unquote, for its intercontinental ballistic missile test. He also admitted that Russia, quote, could have interfered with the 2016 election and vowed to work with Poland on addressing threats from the country. Trump's whirlwind visit to Warsaw came just before a meeting with Putin. He will travel to Germany for Friday and Saturday's G20 summit, where he will sit down for talks with the Russian leader for the first time since taking office. Trump's appearance alongside the Polish president will go down badly in Russia. Trump's visit to Warsaw was coordinated with the Three Seas Initiative, which, in a new 12-nation trade and economic bloc organized in part to limit Russia's power, especially in ways that diminish its dominance in the region's energy markets. Quote, to the citizens of this great region, America is eager to expand our partnership with you. We welcome stronger ties of trade and commerce as you grow your economies, Trump said in his Transiski Square speech. Quote, and we are committed to securing your access to alternate sources of energy so Poland and its neighbors never again held hostage to a single supplier of energy, unquote. North Korea's ballistic missile test the day before Trump left the U.S. moved the threat posed by Kim Jong-un's illicit nuclear activity up to the top of America's president's list of shared threats. That's just a massive memorial. That's awesome. At his joint press conference with Duda, Trump called on the global community to ensure there are, quote, consequences, unquote, for Pyongyang's, that's the North Korean capital. I can't say it. I can only butcher it. For their belligerence, and warned that he is considering a, quote, severe, unquote, response. quote, I call on all nations to confront this global threat and publicly demonstrate to North Korea that there are consequences for very, very bad behavior, unquote, he declared. I have pretty severe things that we're thinking about, Trump said, addressing a question from DailyMail.com, but added, quote, that doesn't mean that we'll do them, unquote. Trump later said that he was working with Poland on addressing threats from Russia and reiterating his calls for NATO members to meet their financial obligations. Trump said that, quote, as a result, end quote, of his administration pushing, quote, billions of dollars, unquote, have begun to pour into NATO. Quote, in fact, people are shocked, but billions and billions of dollars more are coming in from countries that, in my opinion, would not have been paying so quickly, unquote. To those who would criticize our tough stance, I would point out that the United States has demonstrated not merely with words but with actions that we stand firmly behind Article 5, the Mutual Defense Commitment, he said, checking an important box in his remarks for European leaders who have worried that his warnings to pay up or else meant the U.S. was rethinking its involvement in the international organization. Trump heaped praise on Poland for paying up. He told the Polish people, quote, you were supported in that victory over communism by a strong alliance of free nations in the West that defied tyranny. Now, among the most committed members of the NATO alliance, Poland has resumed its place as a leading nation of a Europe that is strong, whole, and free, unquote. A strong Poland is a blessing to the nations of Europe, and they know that. A strong Europe is a blessing to the West and to the world. It goes on to talk about the history of Nazism taking over the Poland people. There were protesters to the event, actually. Here they are arriving. Here you see the ladies who were protesting the event were dressed in these weird costumes meant to resemble those worn in a new television series based on Margaret Atwood's 1985 novel, in which women dubbed, quote, breeders, unquote, are forced to give birth and have no control over their bodies. Poland is currently embattling in a large debate over banning abortion. So, yeah. There you see how them poor, twisted baby killers are. There you see an old woman. You know, she ain't made no eggs in the last 3 decades. What the hell does she care for? What? You know? That's stupid. She's way past her prime. She ain't been bred or bled in the last 20 or 30 years. But she's out there supporting them women's rights to murder their babies. As long as you got a cause and you believe in it, I guess, you know, I don't know. Whatever. But yeah, he definitely received a rock star like welcome. There's no mistaking. Poland, they've seen global rule for a while, and they recognize that the tide is turning against the globalists, and they can't win. They can't win. What are they going to do? Take Hollywood away? Oh, God. I tell you, man, you can have them Hollywood people. I wouldn't trade places with them for nothing. Be damned to hell for a life of luxury. Also, I can worship the devil and give praise to Lucifer. This article's from Yahoo News. All eyes on Trump, Putin dynamics as they meet for the first time at G20. By Roberta Rampton and Jeff Mason. Hamburg, Reuters. U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are set to size each other up in person for the very first time on Friday in what promises to be the most highly anticipated meeting on the sidelines of the G20 summit. Trump has said he wants to find ways to work with Putin, a goal made more difficult by sharp differences over Russia's actions in Syria and Ukraine and allegations Moscow meddled in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. That means every facial expression and physical gesture will be analyzed as much as any word the two leaders utter as the world tries to read how well Trump a real estate magnate and former reality television star, gets along with Putin, a former spy. The fear is that the Republic president, a political novice whose team is still developing its Russian policy, will be less prepared than Putin, who has dealt with the past two U.S. presidents and scores of other world leaders. Quote, "There's nothing the Kremlin would like to see than a U.S. president who will settle for a grip and a grin and walk away saying that he had this fabulous meeting with the Kremlin autocrat," unquote. Representative Adam Schiff, the top Democrat on the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee, said in an interview on MSNBC, as investigations at home continue into whether there was any collusion between Trump's presidential campaign and Russia, the U.S. president has come under pressure to take a hard line against the Kremlin. Moscow has denied any interference, and Trump says his campaign did not collude with Russia. On Thursday, Trump won praise from at least one Republican hawk in the U.S. Congress after his speech in Warsaw, in which he urged Russia to stop its, quote, destabilizing activities, unquote, and end its support to Syria and Iran. Quote, "This is a great start in an important week of American foreign policy," end quote, said Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who has often been critical of Trump on security issues. But earlier in the day, Trump declined to say definitely whether he believes U.S. intelligence officials who have said that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. Quote, "I think it was Russia, but I think it was probably other people and/or countries, and I see nothing wrong with that statement. Nobody really knows for sure," end quote. Trump said at a news conference before slamming Democratic former President Barack Obama for doing nothing more to stop hacking. Senators' concerns. Ahead of Trump's meeting with Putin, 3 senators wrote to Trump to express, quote, deep concern, end quote, about reports of his administration planned to discuss the return of Russia of diplomatic compounds in Maryland and New York that were seized by the Obama administration last year in response to alleged Russian election meddling. Republican Senators Johnny Isakson and Marco Rubio and Democratic Senator Jeannie Shaheen said returning to the facilities would, quote, embolden, unquote, Putin and encourage further efforts by Russia to interfere in Western elections. All 3 are the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The White House declined to offer details on what Trump would request of Putin and what he might offer in exchange for cooperation. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said Trump wanted to talk about how the 2 countries can work together to stabilize war-ravaged Syria. Quote, "The United States is prepared to explore the possibility of establishing with Russia joint mechanisms for ensuring stability, including no-fly zones, on-the-ground ceasefire observers, and coordinated delivery of humanitarian assistance, Tillerson said before leaving the United States to join Trump in Germany. Trump was also grappling with a response to North Korea's successful test of an intercontinental ballistic missile, which analysts say had a long enough range to reach Alaska. Curbing Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions has been Trump's most pressing foreign policy priority, and he met with leaders from Japan, South Korea on Thursday evening to discuss it. He has also stated he is also slated to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the G20. Quote, "I'd like to see the president figure out how to engage Russia on North Korea," end quote, said Representative Francis Rooney, a Republican from Florida who is on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. What I suggested to the president here a while back was that since we have all these conflicting issues about Russia right now, and we're still reeling from the fact that they took Crimea, maybe this is an opportunity to reset the Russia relationship in a positive manner, end quote, Rooney said in an interview. Additionally, reporting by Patricia Zingerl, Susan Hebe, and Donya Chiaku in Washington. Editing by Jonathan Otis. I'm sure y'all hear my puppy. Got a new addition to the family, guess you'd say. But, yeah. There's a lot going on. Here's an article for all you global warming people out there. July 4th, 2017, coldest July temperature ever recorded in the Northern Hemisphere. Greenland just set the record for coldest July temperature ever reported in the Northern Hemisphere at negative 33 degrees Celsius. So something for y'all to keep in mind. Can Merkel manage excess of testosterone? God. City of Hartford hires law firm to consider bankruptcy filing. This is from the Wall Street Journal. The City of Hartford, Connecticut has retained the law firm of Greensburg Tyrig LLP as restricting counsel as it weighs whether to file for bankruptcy, officials say Thursday. Hartford has a deficit approaching $50 million and has asked the state for help managing its fiscal crisis. But the state has its own budget troubles and failed to pass a spending plan to close a 2-year hole of $5.1 billion before the fiscal year ended June 30th. The city has, quote, advocated for a state budget that puts our cities in a position to be strong and vibrant for the sake of Connecticut's economic competitiveness, and, quote, Mayor Luke Bronick said, quote, in the meantime, as we start a new fiscal year without a state budget and with significant uncertainty, we will have to advise the council of an experienced and highly respected restructuring firm, unquote. Governor Daniel Malloy said Wednesday it appears that July 18th was the earliest the state legislature, ever how you say it, was prepared to vote on a budget. Greenberg Tyrig, led by Nancy Mitchell, one of the co-chairs of the firm's restructuring practice, will help the city evaluate options to put the city on path to long-term fiscal stability. City officials said over the past 18 months, the city has made steep spending cuts and continues to seek concessions from public employee unions to address the deficit, Mr. Bronin said. Mounting debt and a declining population are problems for many U.S. cities. Detroit officials had also blamed its financial promises on the loss of residents who fled in large numbers for its safer suburbs. The 680,000 resident city filed bankruptcy in July 2013 to negotiate cuts to $18 billion in debt, blaming tax revenue that fell after the real estate crash. Earlier this year, U.S. territory Puerto Rico filed for a form of bankruptcy that incorporates parts of Chapter 9 law, the type of protection urged by struggling cities and countries. The Caribbean island of roughly 3.4 million people has an unemployment rate that tops 12%, more than twice the U.S. average. In California, the cities of San Bernardino and Stockton filed for bankruptcy in 2012. Hartford's physical woes have been driven by rising fixed costs on things like health care and pensions. It must pay nearly $180 million on debt service, health care, pensions, and other costs for the current fiscal year. The amounts to more than half of the city's budget, excluding education. But this is what happens to these cities and states that are under government control. I don't know if Hartford, Connecticut is a Democratic city or what. Let's see here if we can figure it out. Governor Daniel Malloy, a Democrat. Attorney General George Jepsen, Democrat. Senators Richard Blumenthal, Democrat. Chris Murphy, Democrat. Representatives Jim Himes, Democrat. Rosa DeLauro, Democrat. John B. Larson, Democrat. Joe Courtney, Democrat. What do you know? How did I guess? Jesus Christ, man. And then you got people like Bernie Sanders worried about the millionaires and the billionaires and da-da-da-da-da, you know. So whatever, you know, we don't give a flying frigamajig, okay? Meanwhile,
loving a viral video that I saw about a hairy, lovable monster. And no, not the laughing Chewbacca mom. Remember, friends don't let friends drive Chewbacca. I'm talking about a new ad for the National Rifle Association featuring country music legend Charlie Daniels. Now, if you don't remember Charlie Daniels, he's kind of like Wilford Brimley with more. If you don't remember Wilford Brimley, you are our target demographic. Can I interest you in a fruit-flavored diet lager? Anyway, if you have not seen the Charlie Daniels video, take a look.
To the Ayatollahs of Iran and every terrorist you enable, listen up. You might have met our fresh-faced flower child president and his weak-kneed Ivy League friends, but you haven't met America. You haven't met the heartland, where the people will defend this nation with their bloody, calloused, bare hands. That's what it takes. You haven't met the steel workers and the hard rock miners and the swamp folks in Cajun country who can wrestle a full-grown gator out of the water. No, you've never met America. And you ought to pray you never do. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
Now, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's pretty exciting, I'm not sure why Charlie appeared in this ad. I assume it's because he lost a fiddle contest with an ad executive. I gotta say, I haven't heard anyone threaten the Ayatollahs in a long time. It really brings me back. I assume next he's going to go after New Coke and Teddy Ruxpin. The odd thing about the ad is that the Ayatollahs actually might have had a chance to meet the real Americans he's talking about, because all the real Americans that Charlie lists, the steel workers, the hard rock miners, the swamp folks, those are all reality shows. And I gotta say, he's setting a very high bar. Charlie, you gotta ease up on the rest of us. Not everyone can have a tough, manly job like playing the violin. And it turns out, this is just the first in a series of ads Charlie's doing for the NRA. And we here at The Late Show were fortunate enough to get an advance copy of the next one.
I want to say something to the Ayatollahs, the Yasser Arafats, the Idi Amin's, Russian czars, and the great white sharks. Your time is over. Shut your pie holes and listen up. You might have met our tie-dyed, hippy-dippy, granola-chomping, lovey-dovey, artsy-fartsy, lollapalesbian president and his spineless, white wine-sipping, NPR-bag-toting, Netflix-streaming circle of wimpocrats. You ain't never met America, because you remember if you met her. She's hot. I'm talking beer poster hot. Lady Liberty's got a butt you could bounce a quarter off and get 2 dimes and a shekel, or whatever it is you use over in Orania. You haven't met our American pickers, ice road truckers, the swamp loggers, the Bigfoot hunters, the Pawn Stars, and the Cupcake Warriors. And I know for a fact you haven't met the Real Housewives of New Jersey, because those bitches would scratch your eyes out. No, you've never been formally introduced to the U.S. of A. You ought to pray you never do. I am the National Rifle Association of America, and freedom's safe word is pumpkin patch. Boy, we like it rough.
Damn, Charlie's looking good. Whatever you're doing, sir, keep doing it.
Yes, sir. Sounding good, too. I tell you what. Stephen Colbert thinks he is so funny. Man, that... I'm telling you. Let's watch this. Just add a second here to load. Apologize for the wait.
Who are young parents with small kids, and you probably read your kids fairy tales to put them to sleep. And I love that, because fairy tales, I know I've got some viewers out there who are young parents with small kids, and you probably read your kids fairy tales to put them to sleep. And I love that, because fairy tales are a great way to teach children important moral lessons, or if they fall asleep before the happy ending, a great way to emotionally scar them for the rest of their lives. Snow White trusted the old woman, bit the apple, and died. Night-night, honey. Turns out, the National Rifle Association loves fairy tales too. This is true. On the NRA website, I believe it's shavedbutts.org, they have posted, check it out, I'm not sure, they have posted, and this is true, new firearm-friendly... butts.org. They have posted, check it out, I'm not sure, they have posted, and this is true, new firearm-friendly versions of classic fairy tales like Little Red Riding Hood has a gun, and Hansel and Gretel have guns. Here's a little taste from Little Red Riding Hood has a gun. Okay, all right, this is absolutely True from the website. Okay, here we go. The wolf leaned in, jaws open wide, then stopped suddenly. Those big ears heard the unmistakable sound of a shotgun safety being clicked off. Those big eyes looked down and saw that Grandma had a scattergun aimed right at him. He realized that Grandmother hadn't been backing away from him. She had been moving towards her shotgun to protect herself and her home. That's right. That's right. Gets you right there. Gets you right there. It turns out that Grandma is packing more than loose tissues and hard candy. I think the NRA should apply these gun updates to all classic literature. For instance, what about Of Mice and Men? Lenny loved his little puppy so much, he didn't realize how tightly he was squeezing it until the puppy pulled a gun and Lenny backed off. Or how about the children's classic Everybody Poops? Involuntarily after being shot. Or To Kill a Mockingbird, now more of a hunting manual.
Yeah. That's what kind of propaganda that CBS is putting out late at night. I think there's an ad loading. And wouldn't you know it, there is. I got it muted here, I'll let it play out. Take it just a few more seconds. Here we go.
Can you tell? Can you tell I've had a week off, ladies and gentlemen? I'm energized. I'm fully loaded. Both tanks are charged, folks. And it is great to be back. We were on break for the last 10 days, and I hit my target weight, which is to gain 1 pound a day. I did a little bit of drinking, a little bit of fishing. Don't remember what kind of fish it was, because once you deep fry it, you can't really tell what it is. Speaking of frying things, anybody here a fan of Burger King? Anybody? I love the King. It's my favorite food-based authoritarian government. Ever since they stopped making dictator tots. And now, thank you. So glad I didn't have to do that by myself. That would have been lonely. And now Burger King is testing a new menu item that combines, prepare yourself, a Whopper and a burrito. Called the Whopperito. It's got all the ingredients of the Whopper wrapped up like a burrito. It's great if you love both of those foods and hate yourself. It really sounds more like a suicide pact more than anything else. The Whopperito is currently being tested only for a limited time at select Burger Kings in Pennsylvania. So if you're highly motivated and ready to get someplace really quick, then you're not the target market for the Whopperito.
We just chilling.
I'm guessing the Whopperito is not going to have a lot of Hispanic fans. Speaking of which, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is presently being sued over his fake college, Trump University. University mascot is so offensive, we can't even show it. And it's just 2 orange balls. And Because folks, he's got a swinging pair of them. Evidently, Trump doesn't trust the judge in the case for one very Mexican reason.
I have had horrible rulings. I've been treated very unfairly by this judge. Now, this judge is of Mexican heritage. I'm building a wall, okay? I'm building a wall. This judge is giving us unfair rulings. Now I say why. Well, I'm building a wall, okay? And it's a wall between Mexico, not another country.
Yes. No, that's important. It's important. Between Mexico, not another country. Proof that Trump doesn't like Mexico and can't name another country. Now, the judge in question, Gonzalo Curiel, was born in the obscure Mexican province of Indiana. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So it's raised a big question. Is Trump a racist for saying an American can't be trusted because of his heritage? I mean, it's hard for me to judge Trump. My Irish heritage makes me want to fight anyone who looks that much like a potato.
Well, ain't that cute? It can bounce around and shake its fist on a stage. Yeah.
I was just racist against myself. Trump's point is he cannot be judged by a member of any group that he has offended. So that means no Mexican judges, no Muslim judges, no Asian judges, no women judges unless she's a 10. Trump's insulted the Pope, so no Catholic judges. He called everyone in Iowa stupid, so no judges that eat corn. And you know what? Maybe Trump might be more comfortable if he couldn't tell the judge's race or gender. Maybe cover the judge up in an unbiased robe. Make it a white robe, maybe with a matching hood. That seems about right. Don't know who it is. Gotta be fair. That way it's gotta be fair. Seem right? That seems like that. You don't know about that one?
I don't know about that.
Trust me, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. But there is one minority group Trump is reaching out to and pointing at.
We had a case where we had an African-American guy who was a fan of mine. Great fan. Great guy. In fact, I want to find out what's going on with him. You know what I'm... Oh, look at my African-American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest?
Well, it shocked some people, but Trump did say he was going to start acting presidential. And look at my African-American does sound like something Thomas Jefferson might have said. Right? It's a fair cop. In Trump's defense, the man he was pointing at was an African-American Trump supporter. Though if you only got one, it would be nice to learn the guy's name.
Yeah. And you may ask yourself why that he keeps attacking Trump and the NRA night after night after night, you know? I mean, you might ask yourself that, or you may just go along with it and laugh like that little girl in the background, you know, going, yee! But I don't know. You know, that Stephen Colbert, he's a pretty funny cat right there, and, you know, who knows?
So there are a few lingering issues of intolerance left in the United States of America, but there's one bright spot out there, and that's gay rights. In just a few short years, we've seen legalized same-sex marriage, the end of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and the mainstream acceptance of brunch. But not everyone has been won over. Take Texas Congressman and soft-boiled egg Louis Gohmert. Recently, on the floor of Congress, Gohmert tackled the pressing issue of gays in space.
You're wanting to save humankind for posterity. Basically a modern day Noah. Okay, we've got a spaceship that can go, as Matt Damon did in the movie, plant a colony somewhere. If you could decide what 40 people you put on the spacecraft that would save humanity, how many of those would be same-sex couples?
Oh, I know that one. I know that one. Can I? Yes. I looked it up in the Bible, and this is true. There were actually only 8 people on Noah's Ark, and they repopulated the entire world, which means, by his own logic, the remaining 32 people on Louis Gohmert's space ark could be gay. Still work. And if that happened, only 2 years after it launched, that spaceship would be the most expensive neighborhood in the galaxy. By the way, I don't even know why we're making this distinction, because after 6 months on a spaceship, everybody's gay. Free-for-all. It's a free-for-all. I mean, Representative Gohmert, have you seen the movie The Fifth Element? Everyone dresses like Lady Gaga and loves European disco opera. That is the gayest outer space movie since Luke and Han Solo's wedding at the end of Star Wars. They look so happy. So happy.
Yeah. Whatever. I'd like to get this article that I mentioned earlier from The Atlantic, written by Robert P. Jones, on of all days, July 4th, 2017. Headline: Trump can't reverse the decline of white Christian America. 2/3 of those who voted for the president felt his election was, quote, the last chance to stop America's decline, end quote. But his victory won't arrest the cultural and demographic trends they opposed. Down the home stretch of the 2016 presidential campaign, one of Donald Trump's most consistent talking points was a claim that America's changing demographics and culture had brought the country to a precipice. He reportedly cast himself as the last chance for Republicans and conservative white Christians to step back off from the cliff to preserve their power and way of life. In an interview on Pat Robinson's Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN, in early September, Trump put the choice starkly for the channel's conservative Christian views, quote, if we don't win this election, you'll never see another Republican, and you'll never have a whole different church structure, end quote. Asked to elaborate, Trump continued, quote, I think this will be the last election that Republicans have a chance of winning because you're going to have people flowing across the border. You're going to have illegal immigrants coming in, and they're going to be legalized, and they're going to be able to vote. And once all that happens, you can forget it, end quote. Michelle Bachmann, a member of Trump's Evangelical Executive Advisory Board, echoed those same sentiments in a speech at the Values Voters Summit, an annual meeting attended largely by conservative white Christians. That same week, she declared it an interview with CBN. If you look at the numbers of people who vote and who lives in the country and who Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton want to bring into the country, this is the last election when we even have a chance to vote for somebody who will stand up for godly moral principles. This is it. End quote. Post-election polling from the Public Religion Research Institute, which I lead, and the Atlantic showed that this appeal found its mark among conservative voters. Nearly 2/3, or 66% of Trump voters among conservative voters, compared to only 22% of Clinton voters, agreed that, quote, the 2016 election represented the last chance to stop America's decline, end quote. Does Trump's victory then represent the resurrection of white Christian America? The consequences of the 2016 elections are indeed sweeping. Republicans entered 2017 with control of both houses of Congress and the White House, and began the Republican-controlled Senate refused to consider an Obama appointee to replace Justice Antonin Scalia, who died in early 2016. Trump was able to nominate a conservative Supreme Court justice right out of the gate. Trump's cabinet and advisors consist largely of defenders of either Wall Street or white Christian America. The evidence, however, suggests that Trump's unlikely victory is better understood as the death rattle of white Christian America. The cultural and political edifice built primarily by the Protestant Christians rather than its representation. Despite the election's immediate and dramatic consequences, it's important not to over-interpret Trump's win, which was extraordinarily close. Out of more than 136 million votes cast, Trump's victory in the Electoral College came down to a razor-thin line of only 744 votes across 3 states. Pennsylvania, 44,292 votes. Wisconsin, 22,748 votes. And Michigan, 10,704 votes. These votes represent a Trump margin of 0.7 percentage points in Pennsylvania and 0.2 percentage points in Michigan. If Clinton had won these states, she would now be president, and of course Clinton actually won the popular vote by 2.9 million votes, receiving 48.2% of all votes compared to Trump's 46.1%. The real story of 2016 is that there was just enough movement in just the right places, just enough increased turnout from just the right groups to get Trump the electoral votes he needed to win. Trump's intense appeal to 2016 as the last chance election seems to have spurred conservative white Christian voters to turn out to vote at particularly high rates. 2 election cycles ago, in 2008, white evangelists represented 21% of the global population, but thanks to their higher turnout relative to other voters, comprised 26% of actual voters in 2016, even as their proportion of population fell to 17%. White evangelists continued to represent 26% of the voters. In other words, the white evangelists went from being overrepresented by 5 percentage points at the ballot box in 2008 to being overrepresented by 9% points in 2016. This is an impressive feat, to be sure, but one less and less likely to be replicated as their decline in the general population continues. Updating 2 trends with the 2015 to 2016 data also confirms that the overall patterns of demographic and cultural change are continuing. The chart below plots 2 trend lines that capture key measures of change: the percentage of white, non-Hispanic Christians in the country, and the percentage of Americans who support same-sex marriage. The percentage of white Christians in the country fell from 54% in 2008 to 47% in 2014. The percentage has fallen again in each subsequent year to 45% in 2015 and to 43% in 2016. Similarly, the percentage of Americans who supported same-sex marriage rose from 40% in 2008 to 54% in 2014. The number stayed relatively stable at 53% in 2015, the year the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage in all 50 states, but jumped to 58% in 2016. Despite the outcome of the 2016 election, the key long-term trends indicate white Christian America's decline is continuing unabated. Over the last 8 years, the percentage of Americans who identify as white and Christian fell 11 percentage points, and support for same-sex marriage jumped 18 percentage points. In a New York Times op-ed shortly after the election, I summarized the results of the election this way, quote, the waning numbers of white Christians in the country today may not have time on their side, but the sun is slowly setting on the cultural world of white Christian America. They managed, at least in this election, to rage against the dying of the light. One of the most perplexing features of the 2016 election was the high level of support Donald Trump received from white evangelist Protestants. How did a group that once proudly identified itself as, quote, value supporters, end quote, come to support a candidate who had been married 3 times, cursed from the campaign stump, owned casinos, appeared on the cover of Playboy magazine, and remarkably was caught on tape bragging in the most graphic terms about habitually grabbing women's genitals without their permission. White evangelist voters' attraction to Trump was even more mysterious because the early GOP presidential field offered candidates with strong evangelical credentials, such as Ted Cruz, a longtime Southern Baptist whose father was a Baptist minister, and Marco Rubio, a conservative Catholic who could talk with ease and familiarly about his own personal relationship with Jesus. The shotgun wedding between Trump and white evangelists was not without conflict with objections. It set off some high drama between Trump suitors such as Jerry Falwell Jr. of Liberty University and Robert Jeffress of First Baptist Church in Dallas, and #Never Trump evangelical leaders such as Russell Morris of Southern Baptist Convention. Just days ahead of the Iowa caucuses, Falwell invited him to speak at Liberty University, where he serves as president. In his introduction, Falwell told the gathered students, quote, "In my opinion, Donald Trump lives a life of loving and helping others as Jesus taught in the Great Commandment," end quote. A week later, he officially endorsed Trump for president. Robert Jeffress, the senior pastor of the influential First Baptist Church in Dallas and a frequent commentator on Fox News, also threw his support behind Trump. Early in the campaign, but took a decidedly different approach. Jeffress explicitly argued that a president's faith is, quote, "not the only consideration, and sometimes it's not the most important consideration," end quote, citing grave threats to America, particularly from, quote, "radical Islamic terrorism," end quote. Jeffress' support of Trump for president was straightforward, realpolitik. Quote, "I want the meanest, toughest son of a you-know-what I can find in that role, and I think that's where many evangelists are," end quote. Moore, by contrast, remained a steadfast Trump opponent throughout the campaign. He was asked at the high-level embrace of Trump by white evangelical leaders and strongly expressed his incredulity that they, quote, "have tossed aside everything that they previously said they believed in order to embrace and to support the Trump candidacy," end quote. The 2016 election, in fact, was peculiar because of just how little concrete policy issues mattered. In the end, however, Falwell and Jeffress had a better feel for the people in the pews. Trump received unwavering support from white evangelists from the beginning of the primaries through Election Day. As I noted at the beginning of the primary season, the first evidence that Trump was rewriting the Republican playbook was his victory in the South Carolina GOP primary, the first Southern primary and one in which more than 2/3 of voters were white evangelists. The Cruz campaign had considered Super Tuesday's South-heavy lineup to be its firewall against early Trump momentum. But when the returns came in, Cruz had won only his home state of Texas and neighboring Oklahoma, while Trump had swept the southern states, taking Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Virginia, and Arkansas. Trump ultimately secured the GOP nomination, not over white evangelical voters' objections, but because of their support. And on Election Day, white evangelists set a new high watermark in their support for a Republican presidential candidate, backing Trump at a slightly higher level than even President George W. Bush in 2004, 81% versus 71%. Trump's campaign, with its sweeping promise to, quote, make America great again, end quote, triumphed by converting self-described, quote, values voters, end quote, into what I've called, quote, nostalgia voters, end quote. Trump's promise to restore mythical past golden age where factory jobs paid the bills and white Protestant churches were the dominant cultural hubs, powerfully tapped evangelical anxieties about the uncertain future. The 2016 election, in fact, was particular because of just how little concrete policy issues mattered. The election, more than in any in recent memory, came down to vividly contrasting views of America. Donald Trump's campaign painted a bleak portrait of America's present set against a bright, if monochromatic, vision of 1950s America restored. Hillary Clinton's campaign, by contrast, sought to replace the first African American president with the first female president and embrace the multicultural future of 2050, the year Census Bureau originally projected the United States would become a majority non-white nation. Quote, make America great again, end quote, and quote, stronger together, end quote. The two campaigns' competing slogans became proxies for an epic battle over the changing face of America. The gravitational pull of nostalgia among white evangelists was evident across a wide range of public opinion polling questions. Just a few weeks before the 2016 election, 66% of white evangelical Protestants said the growing number of newcomers from other countries threatens traditional American customs and values nearly as favored building a wall that the U.S. border with Mexico, 64%, and temporarily banning Muslims from other countries from entering the U.S., 62%, and 63% believe that today's discrimination against whites had become as big a problem as discrimination against blacks and other minorities. White evangelicals also stood out on broad questions about cultural change, while Americans overall were nearly evenly divided on whether American culture and way of life have changed for the worse, 51%, or better, 48% since the 1950s. White evangelical Protestants were likelier than any other demographic group to say things have changed for the worse since the 1950s, 74%. It is perhaps an open question whether Trump's candidacy represents a true change in evangelicals' DNA or whether it simply revealed previously hidden traits, but the shift from values to nostalgia voter undoubtedly transformed the political ethics. The clearest example of evangelical ethics bending to fit the Trump presidency is white evangelicals' abandonment of their conviction that personal character matters for elected officials in 2011, and again, just ahead of the 2016 election, PRRI asked Americans whether a political leader who committed an immoral act in his or her private life could nonetheless behave ethically and fulfill their duties in their public life. In 2011, consistent with the, quote, values voter, end quote, brand and the traditional evangelical emphasis in the importance of personal character, only 30% of white evangelical Protestants agreed with this statement. But Trump, at the top of the Republican ticket in 2016, 72% of white evangelicals said they believed a candidate could build a kind of moral dike between the private and public life. In a head-spinning reversal, white evangelicals went from being the least liked to the most liked groups to agree a candidate's personal immorality has no bearing on his performance in public office. Fears about the present and a desire for a lost path bound together with partisan attachments ultimately overwhelming values voters' convictions rather than standing on principle and letting the chips fall where they may. White evangelicals fully embraced a consequentialist ethics that worked backwards from predetermined political ends, bending and even discarding core principles as needed to achieve predetermined outcome. When it came to the 2016 election, the ends were deemed so necessary that they justified the means. As he saw the polls trending for Trump in the last days before the election, in no small part because of the support of white evangelicals, Russell Moore was blunt, lamenting that Trump supporters, evangelicals, had simply adopted, quote, a political agenda in search of a gospel useful enough to accommodate it. White evangelicals just entered a grand bargain with the self-described master dealmaker with high hopes that this alliance will turn back the clock and Donald Trump's installation as the 45th President of the United States may in fact temporarily prop up by pure extortions of political and legal power what white Christian Americans perceive they have lost. But these short-term victories will come at an exorbitant price. Like Esau, who exchanged his inheritance for a pot of stew. White evangelists have traded their distinctive values for a fleeting political power. 20 years from now, there is little chance that 2016 will be celebrated at the revival of white Christian America, no matter how many Christian right leaders are installed in positions of power over the next 4 years. Rather, this election will mostly likely be remembered as the one in which white evangelists traded away their integrity and influence in a gambit of resurrect their past. Meanwhile, the major trends transforming the country continue. If any evangelist deal with Trump may accelerate into the very changes it was designed to arrest, as a growing number of non-white and non-Christian Americans who are repulsed by the increasingly nativist tribal tenor of both conservative white Christianity and conservative white politics. At the end of the day, white evangelists' grand bargain with Trump will be unable to hold back the sheer weight of cultural change, and their descendants will be left with the real mood possible acceptance. Hang on, I'll play this little video as soon as this ad runs.
The remarkable truth is this: America is no longer a white Christian country, and that's going to have profound implications. In the early 1990s, fewer than 1 in 10 Americans said that they were religiously unaffiliated. That number today is nearly a quarter. It's 23%. About 2/3 of seniors identify as white and Christian. But if we go down to the youngest Americans, those under the age of 30, only 29% of that group identifies as white and Christian. Today we have 0 Protestants on the U.S. Supreme Court, and if Merrick Garland is confirmed, we will have 5 Catholics and 4 Jews. The 2012 election with Romney versus Obama is a good illustration of just how quickly the power of white Christian America has declined. Romney actually did pretty well among white evangelical voters. He hit all his basic marks that his campaign should have hit. If he had run the same campaign he ran and got the same kinds of support he got in 2004, he would have won. But what had changed between 2004 and 2012 was that the religious and racial landscape had shifted just enough that it wasn't enough to put him over the top. Now, obviously, we're seeing Donald Trump running with this playbook. We may have a real test case on our hands about whether or not there are, in fact, enough white Christian voters out there for a Republican candidate to win, relying on those supermajorities. One key question is, what does it mean to be an American? What is the image of America that comes to people's minds when they even hear the word America? And I think that's one of the things we're struggling over in the country today. For many white evangelicals, I mean, they see something that looks like a Norman Rockwell painting, a white Protestant family gathered around a Thanksgiving table. And I think for many that evokes this era of the 1950s where white conservative Christian values really did hold sway. Compare that to the Coca-Cola commercial that aired during the Super Bowl. We had all kinds of families, you know, they were black, they were white, they were Latino, they were Asian, and they were Muslim, and they were Christian. And it set off a firestorm of controversy. You know, many conservative white Christians saying, like, this is not at all the America we ought to be celebrating. In fact, it's a departure from this image that we have. People fight like that when they are losing a sense of place, a sense of belonging, and a sense of the country that they understand and love. So thinking about the descendants of white Christian America that are still here with us today, and again, it's still 45% of the country. It's a lot of people. How do they re-engage in public life when they can't be the majority? On the one hand, there are leaders, I think, such as Russell Moore at the Southern Baptist Convention, who is really trying to take these shifts really seriously and to figure out how to engage in a way where they're taking one seat at the table and not pretending that they own the whole table. On the other hand, I think we're seeing some real reactions against this, and we're seeing it with the evangelical leaders who are really supporting Trump, calling for Christians to kind of turn out and reclaim their dominant space in public life. There just aren't the numbers out there for that to happen. America is no longer a majority white Christian country.
That's about it for tonight, folks. There's one more article that I retweeted that I never did read. Hold on just a moment here. I'll find it for y'all. That's funny, I'm not seeing it. That's definitely not it. Boycott launched against CNN and advertisers. Here's the list. CNN was called very fake news 2 months ago by President Trump. Many were unaware how applicable the phrase was until recently. Earlier this week, CNN reporters tracked down the Reddit user behind the animated WrestleMania clip retweeted by Trump and published a story threatening to dox the user if they failed to adhere to CNN demands. CNN's article went viral across social media along with the hashtag CNN blackmail and has prompted a boycott against CNN advertisers in retaliation for their shady tactics. the boycott. CNN reporter Andrew Klasinski's tweet, quote, CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change, unquote, has fueled an online grassroots movement to call on CNN's advertisers to stop supporting extortion, blackmail, and coercion. Ever how you say that? The head moderator of, quote, the Donald, unquote, subreddit where the Trump clip was originally posted told RT in an exclusive interview that they were coming for CNN's advertisers. The moderator explained, "This is an attack on the internet and CNN has informally declared war upon it. In return, we need to hit CNN where it hurts and tell the advertised companies that you do not approve of them by running ads at this network or endorsing CNN by running ads." This group has also been using Twitter to galvanize the base to launch a grassroots boycott against CNN's advertisers, a favorite tactic of leftists against conservative outlets, and most recently used against Fox News host Sean Hannity. Boycotts can work both ways. Here are the advertisers: Aleve, Alfa Romeo, Allegra, American Petroleum Institute, Audi, AT&T, Bayer, Bear Paints, BMW, Cars.com, CenturyLink, Charmanix, Clear Choice, Dell, Expedia, ExxonMobil, Hewlett-Packard, Hilton, Infinity, Joseph A. Bank, Lexus, Marriott, McDonald's, Men's Warehouse, Mini Cooper, Michelob, Microsoft, Mercedes-Benz, National Car Rental, National Education Association, Optum, Panera, Palm Wonderful, Prudential, Stellara, Sleep Number Beds, Stellara Artis, that skunk piss tasting beer, TD Ameritrade, Tempur-Pedic, U.S. Postal Service, and Vistaprint. Criminal violation. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange asserted on Tuesday that CNN violated federal and state laws when they threatened to reveal the identity of the Reddit user who claimed to have created the WrestleMania clip. Assange asserted on Twitter that CNN violated 18 U.S. Code 241 and 135.60 of the New York Criminal Code, coercion. Can CNN survive this? In the last 2 weeks, CNN retracted a story and fired 3 employees for publishing a false hit piece connecting Trump to Russia. A producer admitted the network has pushed the Russia narrative for ratings. Jack Tapper's program ran a fake cover story to link Trump to using a gossip magazine for hit pieces, and in another, producer belittled Trump supporters while admitting the network has a strong bias against the president. Folks, that's it. I gotta go. Spread the links. bigal.morgan.wixsite.com/AlexMorganShow. Check me out on Facebook at facebook.com/BigAlMorgan. Twitter, twitter.com/RealBigAlMorgan, Twitter/Alex Morgan Show. Also, the little lady has created a new blog in which she wishes that everyone would check it out. Just go to kbowling98blog.wordpress.com. That's KBOWLING 98blog.wordpress.com. Folks, I hope you have a great weekend. Just in case I don't hear from you between now and then, I hope that y'all have a great weekend. Stay safe and God bless and all that. I love y'all. Peace. See y'all later.
Chapter, let's go. Animals gathered in the masses, just like witches and black masses. Evil minds that plot destruction.